Have you ever wondered who actually makes the rules at a big central university? It's not just one person, and it's definitely not one simple rulebook. Today, we're going to break down this three-tiered system of statutes, ordinances, and regulations. These things shape everything from who gets hired to your daily student life. So, let's get into it.
Right? It's a great question. When you think about it, a university is practically a small city. You can't just have one set of rules for everything. The answer is actually in this really carefully designed, multi-layered system, and we're going to unpack it right now.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the big picture, what university governance even is. Then we're going to dive deep into the three types of rules: statutes, ordinances, and regulations. And then we'll wrap it all up by showing you how this whole hierarchy fits together.
Okay, to make sense of all this, let's use a simple analogy. Just think of the main Central Universities Act as the Constitution. It's the supreme law. Flowing from that, you've got statutes, which are like the major laws. Then come ordinances, which are the more detailed policies. And at the very bottom, you have regulations, which are basically the day-to-day procedures that make everything run.
First up, let's talk about the heavyweights, the statutes. Seriously, these are the absolute foundational pillars of the entire university's governance structure.
So, what exactly are they? Well, statutes are the highest level of rules inside the university. They're not for the small stuff. Nope. These deal with the major, structural, big-ticket items, the policies that basically define what the institution is.
Now, how they're made is super important. The university's executive council, the EC, is the one that drafts them. But, and this is the part you really got to remember, they don't become official until they get mandatory approval from the visitor. And who's the visitor? The President of India. This whole step ensures there's central oversight on the most critical decisions, like, appointing key officers or creating a whole new department.
And here's a perfect example that shows you just how powerful these are. A huge rule, like setting the vice chancellor's term of office to 5 years and making it non-renewable, that's not just some casual suggestion. It's written into a statute, providing stability right at the very top.
All right, pop quiz time. Based on what we just covered, who has that final, cannot-be-skipped, mandatory sign-off on every single statute? Think about that crucial approval step.
Okay, let's move one layer down the pyramid to ordinances. If you think of statutes as the skeleton of the university, then ordinances are kind of like the muscles. They control all the academic movements.
See, ordinances are all about making the academic side of the university actually work. They take the big ideas from the statutes and turn them into practical, everyday rules for things like how you get admitted, what courses you can take, and how exams are run. Now, the process here is a little different, and it's pretty smart. The Executive Council still makes the final decision, but, and this is key, they can only act on a recommendation from the Academic Council. That's the main group of professors and academic experts. Which makes total sense, right? You want the academics proposing the rules for academic life.
To make this real for you, just think about getting into a PhD program. All those specific requirements, the grades you need, the entrance exams you have to pass, the whole process, all of that nitty-gritty detail is laid out in an ordinance. It's the academic rule book in action.
Okay, another quick quiz to make sure this is sticking. We know the EC makes the final call on ordinances, but whose expert recommendation do they need to get first?
And now we get to the most detailed level of the pyramid, regulations. This is the fine print. This is the real nuts and bolts of how things actually get done day to day.
Regulations are all about making things run smoothly. They're not about creating big new policies. They're the how-to guides for the policies that already exist. You can think of them as the university's internal operating manual.
And here's the biggest difference of all. Regulations are made by different groups inside the university, like the Executive Council or the Academic Council, and they need zero external approval. None. This gives the university the freedom to manage its own internal stuff, like the rules for a committee meeting, without getting bogged down in red tape.
And here's a perfect everyday example. You know that specific format for a reimbursement form? The exact boxes you have to fill out, the receipts you need to attach. That level of detail is a regulation. It's purely about process, and it's designed to make things efficient.
So we've looked at the three main types of rules. Now it's time to put it all together and see the complete hierarchy of power, from top to bottom.
And here it is, the pyramid of governance. At the very top, you have the Act of Parliament. That's the supreme law. Right below that, the statutes set the core structure. Then, subordinate to them, you have the ordinances, which direct all the academic stuff. And at the very bottom are the regulations, guiding all the daily procedures. And here's the kicker. Each level has to follow the rules of the level above. This table right here is the ultimate cheat sheet. Just look at that approval row. That's where you see the biggest difference. Statutes need that mandatory approval from the visitor, which gives them a ton of weight. But ordinances and regulations, they're handled internally. This gives the university the autonomy to run its own operations. It's a really clear separation of power and purpose.
And this really gets to the most important question. Why is it set up this way? Well, it's actually a brilliant balancing act. The whole system makes sure the government, through the visitor, keeps an eye on the really big, fundamental policies. But at the same time, it trusts the university's own experts to manage the academic and daily stuff without someone constantly looking over their shoulder.
So, from now on, when you think about the rules of a university, don't just picture one giant rulebook. Instead, think of these 3 separate, stacked tiers, all working together under the big umbrella of the Central Universities Act.
And that leaves us with one final thought. This really elegant balance between high-level control and day-to-day freedom isn't just for universities. Where else in society do we see these kinds of carefully designed, layered systems of rules at work? I mean, from giant corporations to governments themselves, it's a pretty fundamental idea for making any large organization work well.